Please welcome Kevin Murray.
Equipment and how we've woven that into the digital thread. I'll run down the agenda quickly today. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about SRC because I think it helps to understand who we are and what our business is so you can think about how it applies to you, and a little bit on our history with Innovator. The second area that I'll cover is the new equipment management application itself. I'll talk about how we link the equipment that's in that application with our product build process, and then we'll take a look at how we've put the digital thread together so that we can consume this information. So, SRC and Innovator. Who's SRC? We're a defense, environment, and intelligence company. We are a research and development company primarily. We are not-for-profit. We do have a for-profit manufacturing facility that's located here in Syracuse. Our projected fiscal year 21 revenue is $270 million. We have 1,600 employees right now, and we've been in business for over 60 years. As I mentioned, our business is primarily defense. We do work for the EPA and state environmental protection people as well. And we do cybersecurity and intelligence work as well. Our focus today in the area where we use Innovator is in our electronics development. Our employees at SRC are distributed across the United States from Maine to California, and we are international. We have 3 international subsidiaries. SRC Canada is based in Ottawa. SRC UK is in Lincoln. And finally, SRC Australia has 2 offices in Adelaide and Canberra. SRC is an early adopter of Innovator. Our initial system went live around 2004. One of the things about it that's different from the rest of the systems is that our implementation is older than product engineering itself. So unfortunately, the things that I'm going to show you today weren't written to be compatible with product engineering. However, we are upgrading the product engineering this year, and I expect by the end of 2021 that we will have the capability we're looking at today ported over and working with PE. Because we've been with Innovator so long, the way that we've implemented our digital thread at SRC is kind of coming at it from the opposite direction that Aras has taken. We've focused most of our development on the left end of the digital thread, the production side, and we haven't done near as much on the right end of the digital thread where Aras has been so busy since the initial release of product engineering. As I mentioned, we're migrating to product engineering this year. The migration is in progress as I speak. And we'll be taking what Aras has done and what we've done, and we put it together. Right? We're going to have the digital thread pretty well covered. But it'll never be done. It'll always be an ongoing effort. We've come up with several solutions in the product production area of the thread, and I've shown some of them before. We do part serialization in Innovator. We have a decade and a half of serialized parts that we've produced, around 1 million of them. So we have our digital twin. We handle RMAs through Innovator, return material authorization. This is our stuff coming back from the field for servicing. So we have some as maintained information in Innovator. We've released an application recently that I'll dive into a little bit later on called FlowTag. It's how we do our builds. I did a talk centered around FlowTag in Phoenix in 2019. And then, of course, we'll look at the equipment management solution, which is the main topic for today. So let's go. Let's take a look at how this equipment management solution works. First off, what were our objectives in building this app? Well, we needed to inventory our equipment. And we've got a wide variety of equipment that's in there. Test equipment, infrastructure kinds of equipment, things like anti-static mats and test chambers, GPS repeaters. All of our lab computers, there's hundreds of them. They're tracked there. Software licenses, what's installed in which computer, and also we have software licenses on some of this instrumentation. We also track our chemicals, things like Loctite and that sort of thing in the application. But for today and for the purposes of the digital thread, we're going to be most interested in what we're doing with test equipment. So we have our inventory. We want to know where our equipment is. We want to know about our calibration. So we have our calibration records in here, our calibration requirements. We know when a piece of equipment was calibrated and when that equipment is next due for calibration. Similarly, for preventative maintenance requirements and records, that's all part of this application. We also have the idea of a shipment so that we can assign equipment to a shipment when we send it out for preventative maintenance or for calibration. This way we've got an ongoing picture. We've got our fingers on where things are at all times. The first entity we'll look at is the equipment master. I hope you can see this well enough. What the equipment master has for us is information that is true of some class of equipment. And we designate a class of equipment by its manufacturer and model number. The kinds of questions that we're looking to answer with the master is, does it require calibration? Is it test equipment? Is it capital equipment? Do we do the maintenance on site? Do we keep track of where this equipment is at all times? And yes, in most cases, we do keep track of the location, but some of this equipment are big test chambers. They're rooms. They don't move, so we really don't need to track the location on that sort of thing. What are the services requirements for calibration and preventative maintenance? And organize our tech manuals. We've got a vault in Innovator, so our tech manuals and directives and that sort of thing can be attached right to the master, and then we copy it off to the equipment items. So we create our master, and from the master we use an action that's hung off of the main menu called Create Equipment. And what Create Equipment does is to create a new equipment item. And it also sets up all of the relationships. There's a lot of relationships involved in this app. And if we were to set them up manually, chances are they wouldn't be set up properly all of the time. So there's a lot of server-side code that attaches the equipment back to its master, that sets up the calibration records, the preventative maintenance records, the location tracking. It builds all of those relationships for us. So what do we have in our equipment item type? We have identification information, the serial number and our own internal asset number. And then we have the information that comes from the master. We copy that over to the equipment record when the record's created. We have status information. We have location and checkouts. We have maintenance records, and we have damage history. And the status information, the location and checkouts and maintenance records, the damage history, these are the relationship tabs that are across the bottom of the form here. So next thing I'll talk about, I'm moving pretty quickly, I know. We have our equipment item. I'm going to show you how we do checkout. And the way that we do it is via an action. So we have an action hung off the equipment item that pops this dialog. And the left side of the dialog where it says last activity, that's its current status. And on the right where it says current activity, that's what we are actually doing here. So the last thing we did was check this thing in. So when this pops up, it's pre-filled out. A checkout, who's doing it, that's the logged on user, and the current date. So all that we're really providing here in this dialog is the building and the location that we're checking out to. Now I mentioned in the information about us that we have many locations. So Syracuse and our labs, our R&D labs, are not the only places where we're tracking equipment. We're tracking equipment across the enterprise with this application. We maintain the checkout records as a top-level item type. And we've decided to make this a versionable item type. So the advantage for us in making a top-level item type out of this is that we're able to search the records for a particular instrument. And because it's versioned, I can, Innovator has different options built into the search grid as to whether you're looking at only the current version or whether you're looking at previous versions. So if we need to look at the entire history of where this piece of equipment has been, it's all here, searchable and sortable in the main search grid. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is an equipment check-in. It's the same dialog that we looked at a minute ago. But in this particular case, I'm checking the equipment back into the equipment cage, but it has been damaged. So towards the right of the form, there's a checkbox there. I check is damaged, and I say the installation is frayed at the connection to the probe. So now I've noted that the thing is damaged, and I do the check-in. The system responds to that. It catches that in the background in a server-side event, and it creates an equipment damage report or record. It goes to the equipment item, it pulls the identifying information off of the equipment item, goes to the check-in record, pulls in the damage report, and then it sends an email to the equipment manager that says, we have a piece of equipment that is newly reported as broken. So the equipment manager is supposed to determine what the disposition of this is going to be. And he or she makes that determination by choosing what state to promote the equipment damage report to. The choices are not valid if it turns out that the equipment's not really broken. The equipment may be broken, but it may not affect the function of the equipment, so it may be considered operable. So if the equipment's operable, it's promoted to the operable state. And the system then in the background is going to go over to the repair records for the system. It's going to create a new repair record for this damage report, and it'll be staged then for when we're ready to ship the equipment out for its next regular maintenance. Now, if they promote the equipment damage report to inoperable, it does all of those same things, but it also sets the inoperable flag on the equipment, and it promotes it to the damaged out of service state. We also do our equipment maintenance here, things like battery replacement and that sort of thing. So we've made our equipment maintenance records and our calibration records top-level items also. So we can search those records by the type of equipment or when it was calibrated, et cetera. Any of the kinds of search operations that you can do with advanced search, we can do that right from the search grid. Our service records capture maintenance, calibration, and repair all in the same item type. They're just different types of equipment maintenance. So the full record is here right on that one search screen. The other thing that we're able to do by having this equipment here is we're able to inform other processes elsewhere on the digital thread of the status of this equipment. Now, I got to move fast. I'm already 15 minutes in. I can't go any deeper into the equipment management app and look at shipping and receiving and that sort of thing. So we're going to move on and show you how we collect the information. And the way that we do that is our flow tag application. And our flow tag is the record of a build or a record of repair. So we use these things for build and repair. So we're getting that as built-in data here with the flow tag and also as maintained data with the flow tag. Our flow tag's bound to the digital twin. And if you're able to read what's on this particular flow tag is bound to part SRC 2252A, serial number 441. Now, as I mentioned, I talked about this a couple of years ago in Indianapolis, so I'm not able to dive into all of these tabs and what they all do. But here I've switched to the detail tab of the flow tag, and this is the operation that we're doing in this build. So we're building this piece of equipment, and we're going to take some test measurements in this step. And where you see the purple circle, that is a piece of test equipment that we're using to make some measurements. It's a Botron 8572 serial number 1. So we are making measurements here using that piece of equipment. I want to point out to you that the background on that piece, on that specification, is white. Now, if that equipment was broken, or if that equipment was out of calibration, or if that equipment was overdue for preventative maintenance, and they selected it, it would be orange. And the system would not allow them to sign off that step. Now, if you're able to read the actual test that we're doing here, you see in the first row we've got some boxes that are green. But we have a measurement specified here that's supposed to come in between 1 and 10. And it's in at 5, so that is a satisfactory test result. We have another one that's supposed to come in at 1 at 10, but it's outside of that range. So it's marked as out of specification. You can tell by the color coding and by the checkbox in the result area. So this is now our test data that's available. And you see that it's tied to a specific part, a specific step in our process, and a specific piece of test equipment. So let's take a look at how we've used the equipment that we're generating in these two processes together to understand how we're using our equipment. This old-fashioned battleship gray looking form is the one that I showed in Indianapolis. It is our serialized part. So this is what our digital twin looks like. And we have, the gray area up above with all kinds of identifying status information and such about the serialized part. What we're interested in, though, are the relationships, because really those are our threads. And here I'm looking at the test equipment tab. And what the test equipment tab tells me is what pieces of test equipment I've used on this particular part. And if you notice, it says flow tag, and there's two different flow tags here. So what this is telling me is across the life of this particular part, I've used the test equipment that's listed on this tab. I'm going to switch tabs. This is the test data tab. It's the same idea again as what we just saw. We have our flow tag, we have the step, we have the test measurement that was taken. And again, we've got data from two different flow tags here. So we have our test data that was taken when the equipment was built, and we have test data that was done when the equipment was repaired. So we've got our test data linked to our instrument, linked to our part, traceable back to the very step in our repair plan or a build plan that we made the measurement at. The other thing that we are interested in is where we might have used a piece of equipment. If it turned out that the thing was incredibly out of calibration when it went in, and we wanted to know where we used it, we can run a report against a piece of equipment. Here I use SQL Server Reporting Services as the basis for the report. And we can find every place that this equipment was ever used, telling us what flow tag it was used on, which step, who used it. So we know exactly what the equipment was used to measure. And if there's a problem with it, we know if this is a critical measurement or not. We can filter this by date, by equipment, by manufacturer, by serial number. But the thing is that we know what we use this for, and we can trace it right back to the part. From there, we can trace it back to the system and then to the customer that we delivered it to. So that is what I've got for today. And I'll take any questions right now. Okay, I have one question. What were the biggest challenges in implementing this? And I think that would be the server-side code in this particular case. Because there's so many relationships here and so much interplay amongst the various types. There's quite a bit of code there. The other thing that was a challenge is we were managing this stuff in spreadsheets before, and getting the data into the system, scripting all of that was also a significant challenge. Okay, well, I think that about does it for today. Thanks for listening in, and perhaps I'll be talking to you again at another ACE conference in 2022.